Imagine a Boeing 777 disappearing into the sky without a trace, no distress signal, and no debris. This disturbing scenario encapsulates the mystery surrounding Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, which vanished in 2014. For many years, the world has been captivated by this enigma, eager to uncover the answer to the unsettling question, what happened to Flight 370? Join us as we delve into a shocking discovery made by researchers about Flight MH370. The truth is about to be revealed right before our eyes. The mystery surrounding MH370 began with what was supposed to be a routine red-eye flight. Flight MH370 was scheduled to depart at 12:35 a.m. local time from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA, in Malaysia, bound for Beijing Capital International Airport, covering a distance of 4,350 kilometers. The passengers on board, most of whom were Chinese nationals, along with Malaysians and other foreign visitors, were expected to arrive at 6:30 a.m. local time. After takeoff, the aircraft was set to fly north along a route that passed over Malaysia before entering Vietnamese airspace, ultimately heading toward China. At the helm of MH370 was Captain Zari Ahmed Shah, a highly skilled pilot with a stellar record. Zari, 53 years old, had accumulated over 18,000 flight hours since joining Malaysia Airlines in 1981. He was widely regarded as a renowned and accomplished pilot. Outside of flying, Zari was an avid flight simulator user and a computer enthusiast, which later became a focus of the investigation. Although he was a family man, some reports suggested that his personal life might have been under strain at the time of the flight's disappearance. Sitting next to Captain Zari was First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, a 27-year-old pilot who was relatively new to long-haul flights. Farik had been with Malaysia Airlines for nearly 7 years and had logged 2,763 flight hours. This flight was his first on a Boeing 777 as a fully qualified co-pilot. Friends and colleagues viewed Farik as calm, kind, and careful in his work. For both pilots, this was just an ordinary trip. Farik was the inexperienced co-pilot, and Zari served as the captain and mentor. There was no indication that anything unusual was happening when the plane took off from Kuala Lumpur that night. Flight MH370 departed from Kuala Lumpur at 12:41 a.m., climbing to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet and following the standard flight path. The journey across the Malaysian peninsula began without issue, as the aircraft's transponder, which relays information to air traffic control about its position, altitude, and other details, was functioning without complaint. As MH370 approached the border between Ho Chi Minh City and Malaysia, the plane was handed over to Vietnamese air traffic control. At 1:19 a.m., the last communication from the plane was received, "Good night," spoken by Captain Zari. This sign-off marked the last time anyone heard from the plane. Shortly after the sign-off, something unexpected occurred. MH370's transponder failed just before the aircraft was about to enter Vietnamese airspace, rendering it almost invisible to civilian radar. This happened just 2 minutes after the last communication, at 1:21 a.m. The plane immediately veered off course, turning back across the Malaysian peninsula and making a left turn. One key area of interest is this turn. As MH370 was about to enter Vietnamese airspace, it made an unexpected turn and flew in the opposite direction, toward the southwest. The aircraft's flight over the Strait of Malacca and across the Malaysian peninsula was later confirmed by military radar from both Thailand and Malaysia. During this time, the plane descended to 23,000 feet after initially climbing to 45,000 feet, much higher than the usual cruising altitude of commercial airplanes. After crossing the Malaysian peninsula, the aircraft made another turn, this time heading northwest over the Andaman Sea and into the Indian Ocean. This was puzzling, as there was no distress signal or emergency communication from the crew. Despite flying in the wrong direction toward one of the most isolated places on Earth, the aircraft appeared to be under control. There was no way to communicate with the plane. A pilot from a nearby Singapore Airlines aircraft, flying in the same airspace, noticed something was wrong. He attempted to contact MH370 multiple times, but only received static. This added another layer of confusion and alarm, as precious minutes ticked by without any response from the missing plane. As time passed, air traffic controllers realized something was terribly wrong. Vietnamese air traffic controllers contacted their Malaysian counterparts, asking why MH370 had not entered their airspace. This sparked concern, and Malaysia Airlines was alerted that one of its planes had lost contact. In the early morning, the search for MH370 began. Initially, the Malaysian government focused on the South China Sea, believing the plane had crashed somewhere along its flight path. Ships and planes from China, Vietnam, and Malaysia were dispatched to the region. However, nothing was found, and the mystery deepened as hours turned into days. A few noteworthy eyewitness reports added a sense of urgency to the search in the early stages. On March 8, a fisherman near Kota Baru, Malaysia, reported seeing an unusually low-flying plane, with flickering lights that appeared to be flying erratically. While this report added to the growing anxiety, it was never verified. Even more concerning was a report from an oil rig worker stationed off the coast of Vietnam. He claimed to have seen a bright burning object in the sky that night, which he assumed to be a plane on fire. Vietnamese investigators searched the area the worker described but found no wreckage or evidence related to the incident. The search for the missing Malaysia Flight MH370 expanded across vast areas of the southern Indian Ocean. Multiple nations sent planes and ships to comb the waters in search of debris. Weeks passed without results, and the harsh conditions in the Indian Ocean, combined with the remoteness of the search area, made the operation exceedingly difficult. Over the months and years following the plane's disappearance, only a few pieces of debris washed up on beaches along the western Indian Ocean. These included parts of a wing and interior panels that were positively identified as belonging to MH370. Despite not knowing the precise location or cause of the crash, investigators concluded that the plane had likely crashed into the ocean based on the debris found. Could the eerie eyewitness accounts of a low-flying plane and a burning object in the sky hold the key to solving the mystery of Flight MH370? Let's delve into these chilling accounts, which have left investigators and the world puzzled. Shortly after MH370 disappeared from radar screens, several witnesses reported strange sightings. Among these accounts, fishermen from Indonesia near the island of Sumatra claimed to have seen a large aircraft flying unusually low over the water on the morning of March 8. Some fishermen described seeing a plane veering off course and hearing a loud noise, similar to an engine backfiring. While their reports were initially met with skepticism due to the location being far off the plane's intended flight path, they lent credibility to the theory that MH370 may have deviated far from its course after losing radar contact. The possibility that MH370 was flying low over the waters of the Malacca Strait raised the question of whether the pilots were still in control of the aircraft. However, it remains unclear whether these actions were premeditated or in response to an emergency situation. 3 months after MH370 disappeared, in June 2014, a British woman named Catherine T came forward with a new account that further complicated the search. T, who was sailing across the Indian Ocean at the time of the plane's disappearance, claimed to have seen a large aircraft surrounded by a column of smoke and followed by what looked like burning debris. Initially, T dismissed the event as unrelated to MH370, but as the search shifted to the southern Indian Ocean, her story gained attention. If T's account is accurate, it suggests the plane may have suffered a catastrophic failure while still in the air. However, like many other reports, T's account has never been confirmed, adding yet another layer of uncertainty to an already complex and confusing web of theories. Strong conjecture was fostered by the fishermen's and T's testimonies, as well as other tales. Despite their discrepancies, these eyewitness accounts demonstrated that Flight MH370 had evolved from an aviation mishap into a worldwide enigma that begged more questions than it answered. As the MH370 investigation progressed, increasing amounts of resources were required to find the missing airplane. On March 15, 2014, the British satellite company Inmarsat made a crucial announcement. Their analysis of satellite data revealed that after the plane's communication systems had been disabled, the aircraft had continued to ping a satellite. Although limited, these handshakes between the aircraft and the satellite allowed Inmarsat to track the plane's whereabouts. Through this examination, Inmarsat was able to determine that the aircraft had flown along one of two potential routes, one heading northward towards Central Asia and the other southward into the vast, uninhabited southern Indian Ocean. Further research ruled out the northern corridor, and focus shifted to the southern Indian Ocean, one of the most dangerous and isolated areas on Earth. The information provided by Inmarsat played a crucial role in guiding the investigation. It suggested that the aircraft had most likely run out of fuel somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean, but it also indicated that the plane had continued to fly for several hours after losing touch with air traffic control. This discovery led to a massive search operation in the waters west of Australia, where the plane was presumed to have gone down. Despite the wealth of satellite data offered by Inmarsat, there were numerous challenges that hindered the search for MH370 from the start. The area where the aircraft was believed to have crashed spanned tens of thousands of square kilometers of open sea. Ships and search aircraft scoured the area for wreckage, but the search was impeded by rough waters, unfavorable weather, and the sheer size of the search zone. One of the first theories investigators considered was that the plane might have deliberately ditched into the water, which would explain the absence of debris in the immediate aftermath of the disappearance. However, the hypothesis that the aircraft had run out of fuel and plunged into the ocean gradually took precedence over this explanation. While it was initially unclear why no wreckage had been found, several experts suggested that the plane may have sunk almost entirely, leaving minimal floating debris on the surface. As the search continued, several countries in the region reported that they believed the plane had crashed into the southern Indian Ocean. Since the northern corridor crossed heavily populated areas and was deemed highly unlikely, investigators focused all of their efforts on the southern search area. This assumption was later validated by the discovery of MH370 debris on the shores of islands in the western Indian Ocean years later. Following weeks of uncertainty, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak issued an official statement on March 24, 2014, that sent shockwaves through the aviation world. Citing Inmarsat's data and further analysis, he announced that MH370 had ended in the southern Indian Ocean. He also declared that there were no survivors, which devastated the relatives of the passengers who had been holding out hope for some form of resolution. The announcement was met with a mixture of anger and sadness. Many of the passengers' relatives refused to accept the conclusion without more concrete evidence, such as the recovery of bodies or significant portions of the wreckage. While aviation experts agreed with the satellite data, they noted that determining the exact cause of the plane's deviation from its course and disappearance would be impossible without locating the primary wreckage. The events surrounding MH370 marked one of the darkest chapters in aviation history, not only due to the loss of life but also because of the profound mystery that still surrounds the flight. In the view of many experts, the disappearance of MH370 exposed critical flaws in modern aviation, particularly regarding the tracking of aircraft over remote regions of the globe. With 239 people on board, the disappearance of flight MH370 was one of the deadliest aviation incidents in history. Most of the passengers were Chinese nationals, although there were also passengers from Malaysia, Australia, and several other countries. The incident was one of the most emotionally wrenching for the families involved, given the immense loss of life and the enduring uncertainty surrounding the tragedy. Less than a year after MH370's disappearance, another catastrophic event involving Malaysia Airlines occurred, claiming even more lives. On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, MH17, a Boeing 777-200ER, was shot down over eastern Ukraine while en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. All 298 people on board were killed, making it an even deadlier event than MH370. The two disasters, occurring just months apart, severely damaged Malaysia Airlines' finances and reputation. How did two disasters involving Malaysia Airlines occur within such a short span of time, becoming one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history? And how did a tragic shoot-down forever alter the lives of hundreds of families and cripple the airline's future? The search for flight MH370 became more desperate with each passing day. By January 2017, investigators reported that they had scoured nearly 200,000 square kilometers of the southern Indian Ocean but had found no trace of the missing plane. Even after the official search was called off, many continued to search for answers. Then, on July 29, 2015, a remarkable discovery was made. A fragment of wreckage, later identified as a flaperon from the missing Boeing 777, washed ashore on Réunion Island in the Indian Ocean. This discovery was the first tangible evidence that MH370 had indeed crashed into the ocean. Over the next 18 months, additional debris was found scattered along the western Indian Ocean, with fragments washing up in countries such as Mozambique, Madagascar, and Mauritius. it was confirmed that 17 of the 27 debris pieces originated from MH370. Some of the wreckage showed signs of a high-speed impact, suggesting that the plane had run out of fuel and plummeted into the ocean. However, many details about the final moments of the flight remained unclear, especially concerning whether the aircraft was under control when it crashed. Officials continued to examine the wreckage in an effort to uncover more information about the crash. In January 2017, the Malaysian government officially declared the search for MH370 to be over, nearly 3 years after the investigation began. This decision came after all leads had been exhausted and significant search efforts had yielded no further clues. For the families of those aboard MH370, this marked a devastating end to their hopes of closure. Although the official search had ended, the quest to find the missing plane continued. In early 2018, a US-based private company called Ocean Infinity took on the task of searching for MH370. Using a fleet of advanced underwater drones, Ocean Infinity scanned unsearched sections of the ocean floor, aiming to cover more ground more efficiently than before. As the search resumed in some of the most remote parts of the Indian Ocean, there was renewed hope. Unfortunately, despite all efforts, Ocean Infinity's search was fruitless. In May 2018, the company announced that it had found no evidence of MH370 and concluded the mission after several months of searching. The outcome was heartbreaking for everyone involved, especially the families, who were once again left without answers. Later that year, the Malaysian Transport Ministry released a final report on MH370's disappearance. Although the report did not offer any new conclusions, it did provide critical details about the investigation. It suggested that there were strong indications the plane had been deliberately flown off course. Since the jet had rapidly turned several times, authorities believed that someone might have seized control of the aircraft from the cockpit. However, with no definitive suspect, the mystery of MH370's fate remains unsolved. Since the disappearance of MH370, countless theories have been proposed about what might have happened. Investigators briefly considered a Thai national who had purchased a last-minute ticket as a potential suspect. At first, the authorities thought the man might have been part of a plan to hijack a vehicle, but Interpol soon ruled him out as a suspect. Similar concerns were aroused by 2 Iranian nationals who were traveling using passports that had been stolen, which sparked rumors that terrorism may have been involved. Officials from Malaysia, including National Security Chief Ahmed Zahid Hamidi at the time, verified that the 2 individuals traveling to Europe on stolen passports were asylum applicants. Investigators came to the conclusion that their presence on the trip was probably unrelated to the loss of the jet because they had no known links with terrorist groups. However, when it became known that travelers had been using fictitious passports, many began to wonder if MH370 had fallen victim to criminal activities. As the inquiry continued, other theories such as pilot suicide and technical failure became apparent. Experts, who cited data from Captain Zari Ahmed Shah's home flight simulator, which displayed paths similar to the plane's actual trajectory, conjectured that Shah may have deliberately crashed MH370. Since no serious proof has been provided to link Zari to the crime, this theory remains debatable. The secret surrounding flight MH370 had a long-lasting impact on global collaboration and aviation safety. New rules to require aircraft to report their positions more often while flying over rural areas have been proposed in the years since the plane disappeared. There have also been calls for improved communication between air traffic control centers and more sophisticated technologies to track aircraft in real time, especially over oceans where radar coverage is limited. The search for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 has been one of the biggest and most complex undertakings in aviation history. Every new piece of evidence, from the signals intercepted in the Indian Ocean to the debris found on far-off coasts, has added to the mystery rather than solved it. The relatives of those on board continue to hope for answers even after the official search has concluded, and the mystery surrounding the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 continues to captivate people worldwide. It remains to be seen if the full story of what happened that night will ever be uncovered, but even years after the jet vanished, many are still searching for the truth. How did this aviation mystery not only reshape global flight safety but also leave us with more unanswered questions about that fateful night? Both the Malaysian and American governments conducted thorough investigations into the passengers and crew of MH370 as soon as it vanished. In particular, the authorities wanted to determine if any of the people were connected to terrorist groups or other illegal activities that could explain the plane's sudden disappearance. In the days and weeks that followed the tragedy, every passenger was scrutinized, and their backgrounds were thoroughly investigated. The report that emerged from these investigations contained nothing suspicious. None of the passengers had any known ties to extremist groups, and there was no evidence linking their actions to terrorism. Despite this, the findings did little to ease the growing fears. Flight engineers and aviation experts speculated about possible scenarios, suggesting that someone on board may have intentionally tampered with the plane's systems. One theory, proposed by a flight engineer, involved the possibility of a hijacking by someone familiar with the intricate workings of the Boeing 777. The plane's abrupt departure from its intended route and the fact that the transponder was turned off, rendering it undetectable to civilian radar, lent credibility to this idea. When the media began speculating about a Russian passenger on the plane, the theory gained more traction, with suggestions that he may have had the technical expertise to take control of the aircraft. However, this idea was not supported by further research, and attention gradually shifted away from any individual. This shift was heightened by reports that in the hours and days following the plane's disappearance, some passengers' phones still appeared to be ringing. Family members of the missing passengers recounted their heartbreak when, after repeatedly calling their loved ones, they heard the phones ringing instead of going straight to voicemail. This led some to believe that the passengers might still be alive and possibly held captive on a remote island. However, telecom specialists were quick to offer more plausible explanations, noting that network delays or technical issues could cause phones to ring even when the person on the other end was unreachable. If this hypothesis was accurate, it did little to dispel the mystery surrounding the flight. The eerie thought of unanswered phone calls echoing in the void only deepened the sense that MH370 had become a ghost flight, lost beyond the reach of modern technology. As more information about the flight path became available, the disappearance of flight MH370 took on an even more enigmatic quality. The fifth chapter of the book on the disappearance of Flight 370 explores this strange path deviation and suggests that it was likely done on purpose. The book raises the possibility of a hijacking, noting that the abrupt turn and subsequent disabling of the plane's communication systems would require a high level of expertise. The hijacking theory was one of the more plausible options put forward, especially considering the perplexing silence that followed the plane's turn. Some argue that the aircraft's operator was acting deliberately, while others suggest they might have been attempting to avoid a disaster. There are differing opinions among the public. Some believe the cause was a mechanical issue or an error on the part of the captain, while others maintain that a hijacker must have taken control of the plane. The sudden turn and the unsettling silence that followed make the loss of MH370 one of the strangest stories in aviation history. One of the most perplexing aspects of the MH370 disappearance is the complete lack of communication from the crew or passengers after the plane changed course. In today's world of advanced technology, it is common for passengers to use their cell phones to call or send messages in the event of an emergency. Yet, no such contact was made on MH370. Given that the plane was flying over populated areas with good cell phone coverage, this silence seemed especially odd. Even if the aircraft's communication systems had been disabled, passengers should have been able to use their phones to call for help. The fact that no one did suggests that something unusual occurred on board. One plausible theory is that the crew and passengers were incapacitated by a catastrophic event or depressurization. After the plane disappeared from public radar, investigators had to rely heavily on military radar data to piece together the last moments of MH370. These statistics made an already confusing situation even more unclear. According to radar data, the aircraft had flown at varying altitudes, sometimes ascending to 45,000 feet before descending to 29,500 feet. These erratic altitude changes raised questions about whether the pilot was in control of the plane or if something else had gone wrong. The most concerning scenario suggested by the radar data is that there may have been a serious failure in the cockpit, preventing the crew from operating the aircraft as intended. Another possibility is that the pilot intentionally flew at altitudes that would make it harder for radar to detect them. However, these remain theories until more definitive evidence emerges. One of the most chilling aspects of the MH370 mystery is the theory that the passengers were unconscious for much of the flight. Investigators believe the plane was flying at an altitude of 29,500 feet for a significant portion of its journey. If the cabin had been depressurized at that height, the oxygen masks would have deployed, but they would have only supplied oxygen for a short time. The resulting oxygen deprivation would have caused hypoxia, a condition in which the brain is starved of oxygen. After about 15 to 20 minutes, this would have led to confusion, unconsciousness, and ultimately death among the passengers. This could explain why no one used their phones to call for help. They were likely already unconscious or disoriented. The tragedy takes on a haunting dimension when one considers the likelihood that the passengers were unaware of their impending fate. Flight MH370 is now a ghost in the sky, a modern mystery with no resolution. Despite years of searching, numerous investigations, and endless speculation, the plane and its occupants remain missing. The strange aspects of the flight, such as the sudden course change and eerie silence, continue to fuel unease and fear. Although some debris has been found, it has only deepened the mystery, offering no clear answers about what really happened that night. Public interest in the MH370 mystery has only grown over time, and investigations into the enigma are ongoing. Whether the plane will ever be found is a question that may never be answered. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, and like this video if you want to receive more updates. While you are still here, click the video showing on your screen to see more amazing content.